Hey everybody! Today we're going to be continuing our deep dive into Coldplay's discography by reviewing their third release in 2005, X and Y. This is following their second album, the ambitious and far-reaching A Rush of Blood to the Head. Let's get started. Kicking off the record, we have Square One, a more focused piece that lyrically branches off from their more intimate platitudes and springs towards something arguably more ambitious. It's interesting and just as vague and as somewhat difficult to decipher as many a song on their last album. Interestingly enough, rather than focusing on building tension towards a climax, this track is on the whole way through, to various extents. After this, we continue this change in songwriting with the track What If, an enjoyable ballad that builds itself slowly towards its dutiful guitar chorus and signature Chris Martin howling. I like the way the lyrics build on this one, from what if I got it wrong to every step that you take could be your biggest mistake. It feels as if the band is adding another factor to their usual lyrical structure here, something that we see hints of in the first track, where there was first the I of Parachutes and the U of Rush of Blood to the Head, there is now the U and I of X and Y. It's an intriguing new direction in my opinion. It's like two people having a conversation. The album gets even more lively with the punchy white shadows, and it's at this point, if not much earlier, that you'll start to see the more obtuse differences of X and Y from its predecessor. It's much more produced for one, and uses that to create something simultaneously more accessible and more dense. I particularly like the abruptly sentimental organ finisher of White Shadows, which transitions to Fix You beautifully. While I have come around on Fix You, it's still too structurally simple for me to feel satisfied with it. In addition, the build-up is too slow and heaving for the payoff to work. The guitars that lead the way to the climax almost sound like a Christian rock tune, and I'm really just not a fan. For whatever reason though, that climax at the end pours its absolute heart out, and it still manages to hook me, as derivative as it may be. I'm impressed by how much soul they can put into something so plain, something you'll notice further down the line in their discography. And like the prior track, this quiet sort of mission statement at the end leads the way perfectly into the next song, one of my favorites on the album, Talk. This one sports a legendary sample which I really admire, a small riff from the Mighty Kraftwerk's Computer Love. It uses this to great effect in a song that feels adventurous and tightly constructed. It may be a bit overproduced for my liking, much like the rest of the album in fact, but again their passion is on display here. The lyricism continues down this very conversational road, and in this case excels at it with its more direct approach than many of the other songs here. Following Talk, the title track X and Y starts slowly, then pounces onto a more lively version of its introduction, and bombastically leaps towards a syrupy, free-falling chorus, which is boosted wonderfully by a euphoric shift that leans towards what feels like plummeting down through the air. I dig the way this one jumps around so smoothly, and really only wish it were faster to better compensate. The ending caps it all off quite well. A Message is seemingly a sort of interlude to transition between two relatively lively moments on the record, one that feels out of place and really unnecessary. While the acoustic here is comfortable and I'm somewhat satisfied with it, the lyrics are dull and trying too hard to be anthemic. While I'm not disgusted by the song, its build-up and general content are utilized better with other songs on this thing by a good margin. At this point, some of the bloat on the album starts to accumulate, and we can see that here. Luckily, the next song makes up for it by being utterly fantastic. The way it holds back for a second and then shoots out like a bullet from a gun is so satisfying. The bass riff, once the first verse starts, is excellent as well, paired with a sparkling guitar and downbeat, almost accusatory lyrics. Then, after the first roaring chorus, the verses go further with a great percussive jangle, and guitars seeming to croon around in a syrupy haze. Then the whole thing implodes on itself and we have an excellent centerpiece which seems to transcend the rest of the song. One of the few songs on here which aren't marred by the production at all. After this we have one of the bigger songs on the album, Speed of Sound. Unlike many of the others, I do appreciate its simple presentation, which manages to affect me despite itself. The overt production here does wonders to make it deeper melodically, which is an important and much needed boost. I appreciate the lyrical tinges here, designed in some ways seemingly to anticipate cognition, and in others simply to sound snappy and important. While it may be a tad shallow, I really appreciate these touches. It ends up making the chorus feel important. Like many of the other tracks in this album, I wish they went further with this direction. Then a great left turn comes in the form of the hardest part. It takes this piano riff and runs with it with some very pleasing guitars that culminate to create a very well-meaning and well-structured piano rock tune. The lyrics are simply too plain on this one though. It feels as if they were on the back burner while the rest of the song was being written. Not a fan. The lyric, everything I know is wrong, everything I do, it just comes undone, feels structured perfectly with the instrumentation to be a brilliant climax though. Despite it feeling underdeveloped, great song. The album kind of dips after this point, unfortunately. Swallowed by the Sea introduces itself with a reflective, wallowing instrumental, which has a nice guitar twang at the end and is pleasant to the ears, but is ultimately sort of dull regardless, and leads into an uninteresting, unimpactful riff that even after handing the reins off to another, doesn't seem to build towards anything or even present anything interesting in compensation. The song simply feels like a single statement that didn't justify itself. The album picks up a little with Twisted Logic, an enjoyable, if a bit too hazy track that doesn't really justify itself either. It's both too long and yet not enough is done here for my liking. They simply don't go far enough with the instrumentation or lyricism for it to feel like a new experience listening to this one. The blowout ending is enjoyable though, and the way it stops so suddenly to lead into Till Kingdom Come feels somewhat final. Till Kingdom Come is unfortunately similar to Swallowed by the Sea, however. It's a single statement that isn't justified by its lackluster instrumentation. The lyrics here are nice though, if a bit plain, and the acoustic here, backed only by the organ, is a good change of pace for an album that feels overproduced. By this point though, it's just too little too late. This thing is over an hour long, and it just doesn't need to be. Unlike its predecessor, this record doesn't justify its length or feel entirely necessary. I imagine the troubled production was likely the cause of this. And on the note of a different kind of production, this thing is too cobbled together, all wrapped up in a bow of sheen and glimmer. It feels as if the themes it's trying to present have to be uncovered under layers of uninteresting and unimportant fluff that unfortunately mars much of the album. None of it's abhorrent, but this thing isn't finished, and it shows. While I do like this album, and I appreciate the new direction and the ambition required to present it, the project just sort of fell flat. In my opinion, they just didn't pull it off. I'm feeling a 59 on this thing. Yeah. So what did you guys think of this LP? Was I too harsh on it? Maybe too generous? Let me know down in the comments below. If there are any records you'd like to see reviewed by me, feel free to ask. And if you like this content, consider subscribing and hitting that bell for more of it. In any case, thanks for your time, and have a great day.